Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to say, the stack of research we are covering today, it feels a little less like a standard topic and a little more like someone found the blueprints to a very specific type of mind
Right.
and just laid them out on the table. We are talking about a concept the sources call outcast intelligence or sometimes adaptive intelligence.
It is a heavy stack today.
Yeah.
We're looking at a synthesis of, well, psychological theory, systems theory, and even some structural anthropology. We've got ideas from Victor Turner, Gregory Bates, and Ilya Prigozhin. I mean, it's a real mix.
And before anyone listening sees that word outcast and thinks, okay, this is for the edgy rebels or,
Right.
this is some sort of lone wolf manifesto, we need to stop you right there.
Exactly. It is so crucial to clarify this immediately. When the sources use the word outcast, they are not talking about a social clique. They're not talking about the kid smoking behind the gym.
No.
They're using outcast as a structural term.
Meaning exclusion.
Meaning structural exclusion. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are talking about a specific cognitive architecture that develops under pressure.
Yeah.
The central thesis here is just fascinating.
Yeah.
What happens to a high-functioning mind when it experiences an early rupture?
And by rupture, you mean trauma, neglect, or just that deep sense of not fitting in.
Precisely. When the environment stops making sense or, stops being safe, the sources argue that the mind doesn't just get sad, it adapts. It builds a supercomputer.
It becomes a hyper-observant pattern recognition machine.
That's it, exactly.
So if you are the kind of person who feels like you are constantly overanalyzing the room while everyone else is just, well, living in it, this deep dive is for you. Our mission today is to unpack how this adaptive intelligence works, why it can feel like such a burden sometimes, and how to stop it from burning you out.
And I want to set the tone early, just like the source material does. This is not a self-help session.
Yeah.
It isn't therapy. The sources frame this as structural education. We're looking at the mechanics of how a mind protects itself.
Yeah.
Because that brilliance, that ability to see everything, it can so easily become a prison if we aren't careful.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We start with the profile, the adapter. Who is this person?
The profile is really defined by that initial rupture. This is someone who, for whatever reason, grew up outside of belonging. Maybe they were neglected, maybe neurodivergent in a rigid system, or maybe the environment just wasn't safe.
But the key is that the external world wasn't a reliable place.
Not at all. And when the world isn't safe, you can't just relax into it. You can't trust it to hold you.
Right.
And this is the pivot point in the literature. When a child cannot rely on people, parents, peers, authority figures to, regulate their safety, the mind makes a shift.
Okay.
It stops studying people as people. It starts studying the environment as a system.
That distinction hit me hard. You stop looking for connection and you start looking for mechanics.
It's a survival strategy. I mean, if I can't trust you to be kind, I have to figure out the pattern of your behavior so I can predict when you'll be angry.
Of course.
If I can't trust the school, to be fair, I have to analyze the hierarchy to know where the threats are.
So you become a little seismograph. You are just constantly scanning for tremors.
Precisely. And if you do that for 10, 20 years, you build a brain that is incredibly pattern sensitive. It's contradiction tolerant because it's used to seeing people say one thing and do another.
And it's meaning driven.
Very meaning driven. But, and this is the catch, it's an intelligence that is, by definition, lonely. It's outcast intelligence because it was formed in the absence of the tribe.
It's intelligence formed in the cold.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
There's this really poignant moment in the sources, a thought that I think so many people have had but never really said out loud. It's the cost of this brilliance. The text says something like, if I were normal, I wouldn't need this.
That is the wound of adaptive brilliance. It feels like compensation, not a gift. You might catch yourself thinking, my depth is just proof that I was alone. Or, I only built this complex internal world because the external world rejected me.
It's like you have this Ferrari engine of a brain, but you only built it because you had to outrun a bear.
That's a decent analogy.
Yeah.
The sources use the metaphor of a diamond. A diamond is formed under immense pressure.
Right.
The pressure, the trauma, the loneliness, that was real. And it's painful. You don't have to deny that. But the diamond, the clarity, the structure, the intelligence is also real.
So both things can be true.
Both things are absolutely true. And the sources emphasize this. You don't have to romanticize the trauma to appreciate the intelligence it built. You can hate the pressure but love the diamond.
So we have this mind that is wired for vigilance and analysis. It sees through structures that give other people comfort, which I imagine makes it really hard to just, hang out at a barbecue.
It does. And that brings us to the second major theme in the research, the cognitive misalignment. This explains why the adapter so often feels frustrated communicating with what we might call standard minds.
This section blew my mind. The distinction between non-dual thinking and analytic thinking.
Let's break that down because non-dual can sound a bit mystical, but here it is very technical. Most of the modern Western world operates on an analytic frame. The word analysis comes from the Greek analuin, which literally means to loosen or to break up.
So to understand something, we cut it into pieces.
Right. We differentiate. We create categories to reduce ambiguity. Logic versus emotion.
Work versus play.
Biology versus psychology. You versus me. We split things to manage them.
We put things in boxes so they aren't messy. But the adapter, they don't do that.
No. The adaptive mind, according to these texts, it integrates first. Because they grew up scanning for threats, they learned that everything is connected. A tone of voice connects to a facial expression, which connects to past history, which connects to the safety of the room.
They see the whole web, not just the spider.
They see structure across domains.
Mm-hmm.
The source uses the term isomorphism. It just means same shape. The adapter sees the same pattern repeating in biology, in the stock market, and in a conversation.
There was this incredible example in the text about the word river. Can you walk us through that? Because I think it explains this better than any definition could.
It's the perfect example of this dense intelligence. So if you say the word river to a standard analytic thinker, what do they see?
They see water, a blue line on a map, a noun.
Correct. They differentiate the object river from the land around it. But when an adapter hears river, they don't just see the water. The sources suggest they perceive the water, the concept of time flowing, because a river is never the same twice.
Right.
And the geometry of the path and the erosion of the banks all at once, simultaneously.
Like a hologram.
Exactly. To the adapter, the water and the time aren't separate things. They're the same thing at different resolutions. They're experiencing the word with dimension.
Okay, so you have one person seeing a 3D hologram of a river, and the person next to them just sees wet stuff. That has to cause friction.
Oh, it causes massive friction. And the sources call this the cut.
The cut. That sounds ominous.
It feels ominous to the adapter. Imagine an analytic person trying to explain something. They usually start by splitting it up. Let's separate your feelings from the facts, for example.
Which sounds totally reasonable to me. That's standard advice.
To a standard mind, yes. But to a non-dual adaptive mind, that separation feels like violence. It feels like a fracture of coherence.
Wow.
You're breaking the integrity of the reality they see. They can't separate the feeling from the fact because the feeling is data about the fact.
And conversely, the analytic person looks at the adapter's integrated view and just sees ambiguity.
Or confusion. Or they think the adapter is being too intense or overcomplicating things.
So it's a recursive irritation. It's not that they disagree on the topic, they disagree on the mode of processing.
Exactly. It's a cognitive style misalignment. The adapter feels like the other person is being reductive or even spiritually blind. The analytic person just feels the adapter is being vague.
I love how the source put it. Neither is evil, but the interaction can feel unbearable. It's just two different operating systems crashing.
And that crash is exhausting for the adapter because they are usually the minority. They're constantly trying to downraise their thoughts to fit into these analytic boxes.
Okay, so we have this dense, integrated, pressure-cooked intelligence, but having a high-performance brain doesn't guarantee a happy life. In fact, the sources suggest it can go one of two ways.
This is the pivot point of the entire discussion. If this intelligence comes from rupture, from things breaking, what determines if the person becomes wise or just, defensive and bitter?
And the answer is something called the liminal interval, which sounds like a sci-fi term, but it's actually deeply human.
It is. The liminal interval or liminal space is the capacity to tolerate suspension. The Greeks called it aporia, a state of puzzlement. It's the waiting room between I don't know what's happening and I have a new solution.
And the trick is you have to stay in the waiting room.
You have to hold the space. The sources draw on systems theory here, specifically Ilya Prigoghine's work on dissipative structures.
Prigogine won a Nobel Prize for this, right?
He did. He studied how systems react to stress. And basically, when a system, and a human mind is a system, is under stress, it wobbles. It becomes unstable.
Okay.
From there, it has two choices. Choice one, it collapses back into a simpler form it calcifies.
This is the ego hardening that the text mentions.
Yes, if you cannot hold the anxiety of the unknown, your ego just clamps down, you create rigid rules, you become defensive, you use your brilliance to build a fortress so you never get hurt again.
That is pathology as rigidity.
Yes, that's the person who is brilliant but impossible to talk to because they've decided they know everything.
Right, they've hardened to stabilize the anxiety.
Exactly. But choice 2 is integration. If you can hold that liminal space, if you can sit in the messiness without reaching for a quick fix, you metabolize the disruption. The system reorganizes itself at a higher level of complexity.
So maturity isn't about knowing the answers. It's about the ability to not know and not freak out about it.
That is the definition of conscious maturity in this model. It's strength without rigidity. The sources connect this to Victor Turner's anthropology of rites of passage.
Yeah.
You leave the old structure, you enter the liminal space where you are nothing, and then you re-enter as something new.
But the adapter hates the liminal space.
Hates it. Because remember, their brain is designed to predict threats. Uncertainty feels like danger.
Of course.
So the temptation to calcify, to just come up with a rigid rule and stick to it, is incredibly strong.
So the goal for the adapter is to stop trying to force the world into black and white to feel safe, and instead learn to surf the gray.
To maintain depth with permeability. To be deep, but let the world in.
Okay, speaking of letting the world in, let's talk about the part that probably makes every adapter sweat. Social interaction.
Yes.
The sources call this the niche problem.
This is where we move from the philosophical to the incredibly practical. The sources identify a huge source of pain for adapters. They often feel socially broken. They feel like they are missing a chip.
I literally do not know the choreography. That line stood out to me.
And it's not just social anxiety. It is, quite literally, missing data. The source calls it the tacit curriculum.
Which is all the stuff nobody teaches you because they just assume you already know it.
Exactly. Most people learn the social dance implicitly. They absorb it through belonging in childhood. They learn how to tease, how to flirt, how to enter a room just by osmosis.
But the adapter grew up outside of belonging.
They miss the class.
They miss the download.
Exactly. So now, as adults, they're trying to reverse engineer a vibe using logic, which is exhausting.
It's like trying to calculate the trajectory of a ball using physics equations instead of just catching it.
It burns a massive amount of glucose. And it leads to that feeling of everyone else has a manual I was never given. But the expert advice here is brilliant. Stop trying to be intuitive.
Really?
Yeah. You aren't wired for it in this domain. Instead, use your strength. Be analytical.
Mechanical pattern mapping.
Yes. Treat social interaction like a system. Signal, response, escalation, repair. You already think in systems, so apply that to the dinner party.
The sources gave some really specific examples of this code that I want to share because I think there are light bulb moments for anyone who struggles with this. For example, late teasing.
Right. To an adapter, teasing often feels like a data error. Why are you saying something that isn't true? Or worse, it feels like an attack. Why are you pointing out a flaw?
But mechanically, what is it?
Mechanically, light teasing is an affiliative test. It's a ping. The person is saying, I feel safe enough with you to break the rules of politeness. Are we cool enough to play?
So it's a request for intimacy, not an insult.
Exactly. If you read the pattern as attack, you defend. If you read the pattern as play request, you can engage.
Or self-deprecation. That's another one.
That's a safety signal. It means I am lowering my status intentionally so you don't feel threatened. It's a way of balancing the system of the conversation.
And my favorite, and the one I am definitely guilty of messing up, not correcting minor inaccuracies.
This is the big one for adapters. If someone gets a small fact wrong at a party, say they quote a movie wrong or get a date wrong, the adapter's instinct is to correct the data because they value truth.
Actually, it was 1994, not 1993.
And the room goes silent because the social system values harmony preservation over data accuracy. That is the rule of that system. Correcting the fact maintains the data, but it breaks the flow. The code says, let the error slide to maintain the connection.
It changes the game from, I am a broken weirdo who ruins parties, to, I am just undertrained in this specific skill.
Exactly. You have a Ferrari engine, but you've been trying to drive it off-road without a map. This is the map. It won't be intuitive, it will be conscious. But it is learnable.
It's empowering. It takes the shame out of it. You aren't failing at being human, you're just learning a second language.
And that connects back to the whole non-dual concept.
Yeah.
You are trying to operate a holistic mind in a dualistic world.
Yeah.
You have to learn the translation layer.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean? We've gone from the trauma of the rupture to the high-density river thinking through the liminal waiting room, and finally to learning the social mechanics.
It's a journey of integration. The sources are very clear on this. The goal isn't to become normal. You cannot shove a non-dual adaptive mind back into a standard box. It won't fit.
And honestly, the world doesn't need you to be normal.
No, that diamond is valuable. The goal is structural integration. It means keeping that deep holographic perception, that ability to see the water and time and geometry all at once, but building the skills to interface with the world without shattering.
It's being able to visit the dualistic world, the world of small talk and categories, without losing your soul there.
And without needing to destroy that world just because it feels shallower than you are, that is true maturity.
Here is a provocative thought to leave you with. The sources suggest that this outcast intelligence isn't just a backup generator. It might be exactly the kind of thinking the world needs right now. We are living in a time of massive complexity. The standard binary black and white thinking is failing to solve complex problems.
That's the bigger picture. We need minds that can tolerate aporia. We need minds that can see structure across domains. The adapter isn't a mistake. They are a variation that has a specific utility for the collective. But only, and this is the crucial part, only if they can keep their heart open. Only if they don't calcify.
So here is our challenge to you, the listener. Where in your life are you calcifying? Where are you hardening your rules to avoid the anxiety of the unknown?
And where can you afford to hold that liminal space just a little longer? Can you stay in the confusion long enough to metabolize it into wisdom? That's the work.
It's not easy work, but apparently it's the only way to turn the pressure into a diamond that doesn't cut you. Thanks for diving in with us.
Take care.